We are live after a few technical difficulties, but hopefully people will still be tuning in to this live segment. And if not, they'll be able to catch it afterwards. But as people are tuning in or watching it later, I just want to say welcome to our, what is it, third or fourth Indie Author Spotlight? Right? We had the first
Yep.
written one, so okay,
Yep.
people are starting to jump in. So our third video Indie Author Spotlight. If anyone is new here for the first time, I'm Jessica Ann. I have my newsletter, Wildest Dreams. I'm also a published fantasy author, and I partnered up with One Brilliant Arc to do these indie author spotlights because we wanted to be able to give back and highlight other indie authors along their journeys as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Jaylan and let you introduce yourself too.
Hey there, I'm Jaylan. I'm the editor-in-chief for One Brilliant Arc. We are a story studio that helps marginalized voices become amplified through our editing services and publishing consulting. And we just like to encourage people who are writing good stories that the world needs to hear to keep going and connect deeper with the people who need their stories. So I will now pass it on to Miss L.M. Sanders, who is here with us as our guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you started writing.
Hi, yeah. So I'm LM Sanders. So basically, I started writing when I was really, really young. Like even 3 or 4, I was writing little stories, and it's just something that I've always done throughout my life. And in recent years, I decided that I really wanted to get serious about it after a lifetime of sort of struggling to actually finish things and get things done. That I really wanted to get serious about it and start putting my work out there. So that's what I've been working on.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is.
Yeah.
So, what story are you currently working on now?
So right now I'm writing a book called Realm Crosser, which is a book about a woman who lives as a serf under this family in this sort of oppressive regime where she's a member of a culture that has been colonized by another one, and she gets into a situation where her life is in danger, and then in order to escape, she has to marry this guy from the colonizing culture that she's only just met. And he kind of does this on a whim to save her life, but she doesn't know if she can trust him, and um, she doesn't know what she's getting into because she's suddenly living in the capital city and she's this noble woman, and suddenly she has all of these rights and privileges she didn't have, and so she joins an underground resistance to try to fight back, but she's also falling for this guy that she was forced to marry. So yeah, I've tried to come up with like my favorite tropes
Okay.
and have a good romance, but also have like a really interesting external plot with a lot of political intrigue to have both of them together.
So
Yeah.
yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, we've got forced proximity, we've got enemies to
Yeah,
lovers, a lot
exactly.
of the great
Yeah,
romance tropes.
yeah, yeah. I love all
And
those things.
yet, and yet
Mhm.
the way that you described it, it felt so new and fresh and exciting. Like, I
Right.
want to read this story now. That sounds so awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
So, what
Um,
was it about this story? No, go ahead.
well, I've got one more question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
for
go
it.
Just
ahead, go
about
ahead.
the type of book. So is it just romance, like contemporary, like historical, I guess, romance or contemporary, or is it
What?
fantasy? What is the like? What
Let's
would be
put it
your genre?
it's a romantasy novel. So
Romance,
I
perfect.
like I romantasy, as you know, has exploded in recent years, and I've been really fascinated by that idea as a genre because as a kid, like when I read fantasy novels, I wanted them to be romantasy, but I didn't feel like I didn't really feel like there was a place for that in fantasy at the time. I guess because it wasn't considered highbrow enough or something. So I found it really interesting now, like this emphasis on fantasy novels that are coming out with like particularly female interest and female pleasure and like female empowerment and self
Mhm.
discovery, where that can fit into the fantasy framework, but you can still have like a happily ever after. So I've just found that really interesting. And so when I decided I was going to get serious about this, I always wrote contemporary fiction before, but I was like, you know what? I want to do something fun. I want to do something that is also interesting and challenging. So that's why I chose this particular story.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. I
Awesome.
think it's really fun how we said this at the last indie author spotlight, Jess, but there's such a movement that we're seeing of women coming into their own voices
Mhm.
and finally
Yeah.
telling their stories after a lifetime of just living in someone else's story. And I think that's so powerful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's been really
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
I'm not alone.
Yeah. No. No, not at all.
So
Yeah.
what was it specifically about this story that mattered to you and said you need to write this now?
I think because so just a little bit of my personal backstory. Even though I have a very English sounding name, I'm actually French Canadian, but I didn't grow up speaking French. Like my parents both spoke it as children, but then they lost it, and then it wasn't passed down to me or my brother. So I had to relearn it as an adult. And I now live in Montreal, which is a French speaking city. So it's kind of strange because like it's a weird experience because I am French Canadian, but my French is like so at best. And So I was thinking about that a lot when I wrote this story about how my main character Era, like her people's language has been lost, and then when she moves to this capital city, she suddenly finds herself in a diaspora where a lot of people speak it, and she's kind of struggling to figure out like who she is in connection to this culture that she didn't really get to connect to as she was growing up. And so that was sort of an experience that I had. So I wanted to find a way to like put that in there. Um, yeah, so that was one of my drivers in writing that story.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
so powerful again that you say that because you know, language is such a part of our identity.
Yeah.
And it's so cool in the work that I get to do. I've seen how story transcends languages and cultures. Story
Mhm.
is a
Mhm.
language that
Yeah.
speaks to everyone. So I think
Mhm.
that that's so cool that you're using the language
Yeah.
of story to help rediscover the identity in language.
Yeah, and, like, something that I would like to do in the future is, like, when I did some genealogy and I found some really interesting family stories that go way back, and it thought it would be fun to kind of change those and make fantasy or romantic novels out of them in the future, so I have a whole bunch of to
That
thank
would be fun.
for how I can do that. So, yeah, yeah,
You're making my historical fiction heart very happy.
yeah, I love fantasy, but I love history, and I wanna find a way to, like, amalgamate them, so,
Yeah. You can just
yeah.
do what I did in my book. I have multiple timelines.
Oh,
So
nice.
I have a little bit
Yeah.
of historical fiction, a little fantasy, a little
Oh,
dystopian, all of the above.
that
Yeah.
sounds awesome. Yeah, and I'm also a librarian too, so, like, I'm just surrounded by books all the time, and I see all these stories around me all the time, and it's just, like, very exciting to me, so, yeah.
That's awesome.
That was my dream career when I was younger. I wanted to be a librarian. I still kind of want to be.
You still can
But
be.
editing was.
They're they're good things to do together, so
Yes.
being an author and yeah.
That's awesome. So, Jess,
Mhm,
you wrote your book to appeal to a wide audience, and Miss Sanders seems like you've written a book to appeal to a wide audience too, of
mhm,
different trope lovers.
yeah.
But who exactly have you kind of had in the back of your mind as you're writing of who you're writing this story for?
So I think for me it's people who want to have a story that grapples with difficult things like injustice or barriers to be overcome that can kind of get into the grit of that, but also have that guarantee of a happy ending and that how justice will triumph and like both on a micro and macro level. Like for the protagonist, things will end happily, and then on a cultural level, things will also end happily. I think that's kind of something we all need right now.
Yeah.
So that yeah, that's ultimately who I'm writing for. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah, that reminds me of, again, what we talk about here all the time, that storytellers are the ones who are going to save the world because they're the ones who have the ability to speak their words into existence. So it's like if
Mhm.
you know how to speak the language of story, then you can be a part in writing the better story of the world. And
Yeah.
I think you're doing amazing work. This is why we want to be supporting indie authors and storytellers because we need stories in this world. We need that hope and that inspiration.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's something that I think about as in my librarian work too, is like how am I representing the community that I serve in the collection that I have? So I think about that in multiple facets. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was
Mhm.
gonna add too, like fiction, not that nonfiction doesn't have the ability to change, the world too, but I think fiction has a way to kind of transcend some
Yeah.
boundaries and barriers
Yeah.
that nonfiction doesn't. And so
Mm.
I think that's sometimes makes it even more powerful that you reach people who might not otherwise maybe agree with you politically or, see like, pick up your book, but like fiction has that ability to transcend through some
Yeah.
of those walls, which I think.
Yeah, I think especially fantasy too, is fantasy just
Mhm.
allows that little bit of
Yeah,
distance that can make it
exactly.
easier to look at things than if you were reading a book dealing with the issues in a contemporary setting. Not that those stories aren't important, they are. But
Yeah.
I think fantasy allows you that sort of parallel way of looking at it that can sometimes be a little bit of a safer place to look at these things from. Yeah.
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So
Mhm.
tell us, you just launched your Substack, right? And
Yeah.
then is
Yeah.
the book you're working on, are you writing it? Is it published? Is it like, where are you in your author journey right now?
So so yeah, I have my Substack up. I haven't even made one post yet. That's coming in the next week. Yeah, so I'm just launching that now. I'm in the process of writing the book. It's really long. So, I have about 77,000 words yet, but I
Oh,
still have a ways to go. So my hope is that even though this is really far out, my hope is to publish it in early 2027. I want to self-publish it. So that's the timeline that I am currently working on. Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
awesome. Well,
So
if you need a self-publishing team.
yes.
Yeah.
We would love to help this story get out into the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and don't worry with fantasy, my book is, I think, 152,000 words, so
That's reassuring. Oh my goodness. 'Cause well, that's actually, like, one of the reasons why I chose self-publishing because I'm
Mhm,
always
same.
been a writer that writes really long things, and in the back of my mind, I'd be writing and I'd be thinking, "I gotta cut this down, I gotta cut this down." And then when I decided to do the self-publishing, like, that weight just disappeared, and it just felt
You
I
can just
didn't have
write what
to
you
worry about
want to write. Yeah,
Yeah,
the story you wanna
exactly.
tell.
Yeah. So that was a very liberating decision. Yeah.
For sure. For
Mhm.
sure. I think that's the beauty of indie publishing because,
Yeah.
I've worked with both traditional publishing and indie publishing, but there's when we formed One Brilliant Arc specifically to uplift and amplify marginalized voices, it was very much the traditional publishing industry were not interested in those stories. So
No.
it is a lot more freeing to be able to write authentically, which is where the power of your story is when you go
Yeah. Yeah.
independent.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
As you said, you're hoping to publish in early 2027.
Mm.
It's a really long process to write.
Yeah.
Um, and writing a book we all know is really challenging. But what was the most challenging part of your journey to write this story?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for this story specifically, and then I guess too, like all of the things I've written before, I guess one of my biggest challenges would be that like I have late diagnosed ADHD, so I mean I've always struggled with it, but it didn't even occur to me that I might have it until I was hit my 40s, and then like it just when that happened, all of a sudden like all of these things that had never really made sense in my life suddenly started to make sense because like I was always a good student in school, but then I never like quite did as well as I wanted to do, or like I would be working towards these goals, but then I wouldn't quite get there, it just seemed like the amount of effort that I was putting in was way more than it should have needed to be for what I was trying to do, or just always being scattered and disorganized and making silly mistakes, and then just like really beating myself up about it. And also too, in terms of the writing, like I would kind of spin my wheels in the writing. Like I would be like, well, I'd have trouble getting started, or I'd get stuck in this cycle of perfectionism and just never finish anything. And when it occurred to me that I might have ADHD, like I finally stopped trying to force my brain to work in the way that I had always been told it should work, and I started to look at the ADHD community online and find out like all these people have all these amazing strategies for things I could be doing that actually work for me. So when I started to do that, like that was when my life really started to change, like my life and my job and my parenting, like things finally I didn't always feel like I was trying to swim upstream all the time. Not that I don't still have challenges, but it's just been so much better to work in a way that makes sense for me than to be trying to force myself to be like normal, I guess, for lack of a better term. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
I feel that. I actually work with Jared, the founder of One Brilliant Arc,
Mhm.
has ADHD as well, and so we work together really well. I've gotten to understand how people with neurospicy brains
Yeah.
function differently and how to support them through the writing process.
Mhm.
But what's your kind of pro tip that helped you the most with
Yeah.
getting through the
Uh,
writing?
I think for me, like one of the big things has been like focus on quantity instead of quality, like which I know sounds maybe anti-intuitive, but if I say to myself like I'm going to try to hit a word count, then I stop thinking about whether it's good or not and I just do it. So that's been really helpful. And I try to set myself goals that are maybe like a little insane. Um at, and like
We
whether
like
that
insane goals here.
yeah, like whether and it's not uh to put too much pressure on myself, but it's because when I have that sense of urgency, my brain is suddenly like, "Oh, I gotta do this thing," and then I do it. And if I don't make it, like, I don't beat myself up. It's just like it's like a carrot on a stick for me, basically. But I definitely, even if I don't hit that goal, I write more words than I would have if I hadn't set that. So, um, something else was just making all of my goals visual. So I have a Kanban board where I like go every 3 months on a 3 month blocks and I say, okay, these are all the things I want to accomplish in this block. And then when I'm done, like I move it from one side of the board to the other. And that just like I find just having all of these things be visual, otherwise they just kind of fall out of my brain, you know? Um,
Yep.
and so yeah, like just having that and then also just the act of moving the post-it from like one side to the other, it gives me a dopamine. You know,
Yes.
it's such a small thing, like, but it works, and I also do sticker charts, like, I'm 5, but it works, you know?
Hey, I'm
Yeah.
staring at a giant, color-coded bulletin board right behind in
I
front
love
of me.
stickers.
So,
So
I will say, yeah,
yeah,
for sure. The dopamine, like sometimes I will put a task that I wasn't planning on doing on my to-do list just so that I can cross it off because otherwise I'll feel like I got nothing done during the day. So
yeah,
I feel that right there
yeah.
with you.
Yeah, I need that catharsis. And then other things I try is, like, I have now accountability partners, so I have friends, and other writers who, like, we will share our goals together, and then we hold each other accountable. Because 'cause I'm not very good at, like, keeping promises to myself, but I'm very good at keeping promises to other people. So if someone's waiting on me, I will do it. I will do the thing. So just like doing all of these things instead of just being like, just have more willpower, or just try harder, or because it wasn't that I wasn't trying, it was just that I wasn't before. It's just that I wasn't using the methods that suited me. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Having that freedom to not have to, I mean, this goes for anyone, however their brain functions, but
yeah,
not forcing yourself to fit into someone else's box and
mhm,
just living in the freedom of accepting who you are and working with that is
yeah,
so much more efficient than trying
mhm,
to force yourself to be someone that you'll never
yeah,
be. I think just in writing in general for anyone, that's
mhm,
such a hard lesson to learn,
yeah,
because we don't always like to accept ourselves the way we are. It's easier to hold ourselves up to an
mhm,
impossible standard.
yeah,
Um, but that's something that I'm really grateful I get to encourage writers in my job. And I think that those strategies are really awesome. I'm going to be using some for myself, even though I don't have a diagnosis.
yeah,
I'm some kind of neurospicy, but we don't have a
I'm
diagnosis for
probably in
that.
the same boat as you. I'm like, I I know, yeah, some things I haven't been, yeah, technically diagnosed, but anytime I do talk to my ADHD friends, I'm like, "Oh, I do oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and that."
That's so funny
Yeah.
because when I because I did go to get diagnosed just, like, I really wanted to know for myself, and I understand that, like, diagnosis is not always accessible to people, but I really wanted to do it, and then after after I got it, some of my friends were like, "Really? Like, I would have never thought," and then some of my friends were like, "Yeah." Like, we had never discussed I was like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Yeah, we knew." Like, "You never said anything." And so
Oh.
yeah, but, like, I think, like, regardless of whether you get a diagnosis or not, like, we're in this time now where, like, there's so much more understanding and so much more community that you can have, and that's been a really, really wonderful thing, and, like, people sharing ideas, and that's been really fabulous for me to see what people are doing and how they're hear about how they're living. And so those stories are really important. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing those strategies because those are all really awesome. And you're right, right? Like
Yeah.
having community around you to
Yeah.
support you in reaching such amazing goals, like writing a novel, is so important. It's
Yes.
something that, I mean, most writers are introverts. I am, so I know
Mhm.
that it's really hard to find that community, but it is so necessary to the process.
Yeah.
Um, I also know, like, for diagnosis, because I was kind of in the chronic illness community for the first half of my life,
Mhm.
and I understand how, like, people who haven't experienced not having a diagnosis when they know something about them is off,
Mhm.
is they don't really understand it, but having that validation that it's almost the same as giving yourself permission to finally live as yourself instead
Yeah.
of having to live as someone else. So I want to just validate, like, I totally understand that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That can be really difficult. And like, I and just too, like, not it's not even just about executive function, but also, like, how you live in the world, or, like, you seem like too much, or people are kind of taken aback by the way that you interact with them, and I didn't necessarily understand that, like, why that kept happening when I was younger, and so now I do, like, I'm like, "Oh, maybe I weirded them out. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I said something that, like, they weren't ready for." I don't know. But now, like, I, I guess I kind of know how to adapt to different situations, but also to still be myself because I don't feel anymore like I have to hide it. Um, but I also know now, like, okay, this is what this is how I do this situation, and this is how I do that situation, and that's something that I find is like coming into my writing with this book too. I didn't set out to write a neurodivergent character, but my male main character, like, yeah, like he really is. Um, so he kind of moves through the world, even though he's like he's very intelligent, he's very methodical, he's very tactical, but there are some things like social cues that he just like really misses, especially with the female main character. He really misses some social cues. So so there are things that he struggles with that I think are come out of my own experience as well. So yeah. Mm.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is really great about Substack, which you will learn as if you are on here a little bit longer, is that I really think there is something shifting in our world and about the acceptance of like
Yeah.
diversity, that there are different brains, like everyone is functioning, like we're realizing not everyone thinks the same. We don't, our
Yeah.
brains don't work the same, like, and it is being embraced. And I think it's really exciting to see because I think we need that narrative happening that not everyone is the same and that we need multiple voices telling the
Yeah.
story of our society rather than just those people in power. And so
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
having, women's voices, people of color, like ADHD, like and we need everyone's voices to be a part of
Yeah.
that shared like collective
Yeah.
story. And I think like Substack is just like a wonderful like brewing ground for for
Yeah.
that societal change.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Well, I think too, like the library field also is kind of a haven for neurodivergent
I
people.
bet.
So
Yeah.
most of my library kids are neurodivergent. A lot of people in the field itself are neurodivergent. Since there's this emphasis on like classification and categorization um and things like that. So it kind of attracts us, and I had never really noticed that before, and now I see it, and I see how important these spaces are, for neurodivergent, like for anybody, but for neurodivergent people, it can really offer like a refuge when you're overstimulated or the world gets to be too much. And I see the importance of libraries now from that perspective. I always saw their importance, but now I realize like just how many facets of it can matter to different people who are going through different things. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
true.
I'm jealous that you get to work in a library too.
I know,
Like
me too. I'm kind of like taking mental notes. Like, yes, I grew up in a library. Yes, I also really like organization and classification systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
yeah, my
but
other dream is to have like a bookstore coffee shop or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's actually Jason, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
like, I could just sit and work on my book too while people shop and talk to
yeah.
them when I
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, well, Jess, I can't see any messages that we have, but I was gonna say for anyone tuning in or listening to the recording later, let us know what it was that you had to give yourself permission for that finally unlocked your ability to tell your story in the best way. Because that's a story that I think we need to get out more. We need to be giving people more permission to be themselves and tell their stories in their voices, in their way. And I think that that's where the real power of story is going to shine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So where can we find you outside of Substack, or is it just on Substack right now? Where
So
can people
you
follow
can
your
find
author journey to?
you can find me at LM Sanders Romancy on Substack, or you can also find me at lmsanders.com. I don't have any like more traditional social media yet. I will, but I'm just like I just got my website finished, so I'm just building that gradually as I keep working on the book.
Super exciting. I really appreciate you being willing to share this story with us and your process with us. That's something that you're paving the way for other people who need their voices heard and their authenticity seen in this space. So thank you so much for doing this with us. And yeah, let us know how the whole process goes. We're definitely going to be following along because I can't wait to read this story.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. And thank you so much for the opportunity. It's really amazing that you're doing this and you give the chance for indie authors to share what they're working on. So thank you very much.
Of course.
Yeah, you're
Of
welcome.
course.
And everyone, make sure you follow LM, and if follow One Brilliant Arc if you don't already, or follow me at Wildest Dreams. So we all have our own individual author and I guess author business journeys as well.
Yeah.
So I just want Carolyn Parker wrote in permission to speak and be vulnerable. So I say yes to that, and not like we don't even need permission to speak because your voice matters and we should just take up space.
Yes.
So,
Great.
1,000%.
yes.
Thank you so much again. And
Yeah.
we will enjoy continuing to be the community where these conversations are happening and people are being seen.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye,
great evening,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.